The DMV on Crossroads Boulevard in Orlando, Florida, does not care who you are. It does not care about your net worth, your championship rings, or the fact that 3 billion people on Earth would recognize your face from 50 feet away. It issues you a number, a small slip of paper torn from a red machine mounted near the entrance, and it asks you to sit down and wait. Number 247. Shaquille O'Neal pulled the slip, looked at the board above the service windows showing 231, and found a plastic chair in the third row. He was wearing a navy blue hoodie, dark jeans, and a pair of white New Balances that had seen some use. No sunglasses, no hat. He had a folder on his lap. DMV paperwork, the ordinary kind, the kind that does not care about championships either. He sat down the way a man sits when he has decided in advance that however long this takes, it will take that long. And that is fine. He noticed 3 things in the first few minutes. The first was a child. A girl, maybe 7 years old, sitting 2 chairs to his left with a coloring book open across her knees. She was coloring a lion, and she was coloring it purple, which was factually incorrect and completely right. She had a box of 64 crayons and the focused expression of someone with serious work to attend to. Her mother sat beside her, filling out a form, and had not looked up in several minutes. On the floor beneath the child's chair, half hidden under the plastic seat frame, was a single crayon that had rolled away from the box, a particular shade of orange, the label reading, "Outrageous Orange," and the child had not noticed it was missing. The second was a handwritten sign taped to the wall beside window number 4. It was not an official DMV sign, the paper was notebook paper, not printer paper, and the handwriting was careful and deliberate, the kind that belongs to someone who learned it from a teacher who believed penmanship mattered. It read, "If you are frustrated, I understand. I am doing my best." Beneath it, in slightly smaller letters, Janelle. The woman behind window 4 was in her mid-40s, processing documents with the steady rhythm of someone who has learned to pace herself across a very long day. The third was a man in line near the number machine. He had arrived a few minutes after Shaquille. He was somewhere in his late 40s, in a pressed collared shirt and khaki trousers, the kind of clothes that say, "I dressed for somewhere more important than this, and I need you to know it." He was already irritated. It was visible the way weather is visible, in advance, before it arrives. He looked at the number in his hand. He looked at the board. He made a sound that was not quite a word and sat down in the row directly behind Shaquille. 4 minutes passed. Then the man leaned forward in his chair. He tapped Shaquille once on the shoulder. Shaquille turned around. "You're in my way," the man said. He gestured vaguely at the service windows, as though Shaquille's presence in the chair was somehow obstructing a view he was entitled to. "I can't see the board from here with you sitting there." The chairs were in fixed rows, facing the board directly. Nothing was obstructed. The board was mounted high on the wall, visible from every seat in the room. Shaquille looked at him for one full, unhurried second. Then he turned back around. "Move," the man said, not loudly, precisely. The way people say things when they have decided the person they are speaking to is not someone who requires courtesy. The room did not go immediately quiet. It went quiet the way rooms go quiet, one person at a time, attention arriving the way a tide arrives, without announcement. The woman with the coloring book looked up from her form. Janelle at window 4 paused mid-transaction. "Shaquille O'Neal, 4 NBA championships, 2 Olympic gold medals, a Hall of Fame induction, a business portfolio valued at over $400 million, one of the most recognized human beings on the surface of the earth," did not move. He said absolutely nothing. Now here is the part that nobody in that waiting room understood yet. Shaquille had not come to this DMV by accident. He had driven past 4 other DMV locations between his house and this one. He had chosen this one, on this day, at this hour, because of a name on a piece of paper that had been sitting on his kitchen counter for 11 days. The secret he was carrying into that plastic chair, the secret that the man in the pressed shirt had absolutely no idea about, was a fact that connected every person in that building to a decision Shaquille had already made before he walked through the door. Stay with us for the whole video, because what happens in the next 40 minutes is not what anyone in that room expected, especially not him. Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal was born in Newark, New Jersey in March of 1972, into a household where patience was not a virtue. It was a survival skill, the kind you develop not because someone teaches it to you, but because the alternative is to be destroyed by things you cannot control. His mother, Lucille O'Neal, was 20 years old when he arrived, and she was working before he was old enough to form a memory of her not working. 2 jobs, sometimes the edges of a third. She was small hands, small frame, enormous interior architecture, and she moved through the world with a particular kind of quiet authority that did not announce itself and did not require anyone's confirmation to remain true. She had a phrase she used when something tried her, when a supervisor spoke to her wrong, when a neighbor tested her, when the world presented her with one of its daily, ordinary provocations. You don't respond to noise, you respond to what matters. She said it the way people say things they have had to learn more than once, from more than one direction. His stepfather, Philip O'Neal, was a United States Army sergeant who believed in 3 things above all other things: punctuality, follow-through, and the long game. He had served 2 tours abroad and come home with a specific understanding of time that most people spend their whole lives failing to acquire. That most of what people call urgency is not urgency, and most of what people waste is not time, but attention. He had a habit, when Shaquille was young and reactive and loud about it, of saying absolutely nothing until Shaquille was finished. He would wait, however long it took. Then he would say, very quietly, without judgment and without heat, "Finished? Good. Now what are you going to do? Not what happened to you, not who did it, not how unfair. What are you going to do?" Philip O'Neal died in 2009. He left behind a pair of dress shoes that he had resold 3 times because he believed in things that were built to last, and in maintaining them until they did. He left behind the shoes and the question. And the question is the one that has outlasted everything. Shaquille has repeated it in locker rooms after losses, and in boardrooms after setbacks, and in quiet moments of decision when the easier thing was also the louder thing. The shoes were in his closet at home. The question was in the plastic chair at the DMV, sitting in him like a compass. The way of being in a room, still, attentive, unmoved by noise, was what the man in the pressed shirt was looking at right now, without knowing what he was looking at. 4 championships, 1 MVP, 1 Hall of Fame induction, a real estate portfolio, a venture capital footprint, a media company, a foundation that had quietly touched thousands of lives in cities no one was paying attention to, every piece of it built on a stepfather's question. Finished? Good. Now what are you going to do? The folder on his lap contained paperwork for a property transfer. The property was this building. Raymond Chalk was 47 years old and had spent 22 of those years in commercial insurance, which is an industry that rewards precision and punishes ambiguity, and over time makes certain people less patient with anything that does not resolve on schedule. He had grown up in a suburb of Charlotte, the only child of a father who worked in banking and a mother who organized things: closets, calendars, other people's benefit galas. He had grown up understanding that there was a correct way to conduct oneself in any given space, and that this understanding was a form of competence, and that competence was the only currency that reliably held its value. He was not a cruel man. He was a man who had spent 22 years in a world that confirmed his worst habits and called the confirmation professionalism. He had been passed over for a promotion in February, a promotion he believed, with the grinding certainty of someone who has no other explanation, that he had earned. He had driven 40 minutes to this DMV because the one near his office had a 2-hour wait and he had a 4 p.m. call, and he had already recalculated 3 times whether the math was going to work, and it kept coming out wrong. He had gone to bed the night before, staring at the ceiling, not doing the math about money, doing the math about himself, which is a harder calculation and one he had been avoiding longer. He was tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. He said the words before he fully decided to say them. In the half-second after they left his mouth, he understood they had landed somewhere larger than he had intended. He did not yet know how much larger. The number board clicked from 238 to 239. It was 2:07 p.m. The room had redistributed its attention, some people looking away, some not bothering to. The girl with the coloring book had gone back to her purple lion, unbothered. In the far corner of the waiting room, an older man sat with a cane across his knees and a paper cup of water from the cooler near the entrance. He was in his mid-70s, wearing a short-sleeve button-down shirt with small anchors printed on it, the kind of shirt a man wears when he has earned the right to dress entirely for his own comfort. His name was Earl Tatum. Retired firefighter, 31 years with the Orlando Fire Department. He had been watching the exchange with the expression of someone who has seen enough human behavior to recognize the categories instantly and knows which ones resolve themselves and which ones don't. He said nothing. He sipped his water. He waited the way people wait who have worked long careers in emergency services, without urgency, without judgment, with total and unhurried attention. At window 4, Janelle Morris had slowed by a fraction, watching the room from the corner of her eye. By 2:19, the room had begun to understand who was sitting in the third row. The way it always happens. One person, then the next, then the whole room carrying the knowledge the way a current carries heat. Nobody said anything. The silence had a different quality now, not the absence of sound, but the presence of held breath. Raymond had gone very still. He was looking at the back of the head in front of him with an expression moving through several rooms inside himself, none of which he had fully entered yet. But before you hear what happened when 2:47 was called, and what Shaquille did at window 4, and what Janelle said when she read the paper he placed in front of her, you need to understand why he had driven past 4 other DMV locations to be in this one. 11 days earlier, Shaquille had received a call from a woman named Denise Morris. She was Janelle's sister. She had found the Foundation's contact through a mutual connection and written a letter that the Foundation director had forwarded with a single handwritten note attached. Read this one yourself. Denise had written about Janelle, not to ask for anything. She was clear about that, the specific clarity of someone who means it, but because she thought he should know. Janelle Morris had worked at this DMV location for 14 years. 2 years ago, she had been passed over for a supervisor position she had applied for 3 times. She had not complained, had not transferred, had not done the quiet inventory of grievance that most people would have considered entirely reasonable. She had taken a piece of notebook paper and written a sentence on it and taped it to the wall beside her window. She had a son in community college studying engineering, tuition covered by financial aid, overtime shifts, and a payment plan she had learned not to calculate too carefully. The letter was 4 pages long. Denise had written near the end, "She puts that sign up every Monday morning. She takes it down on Friday. She has done it for 2 years. I don't know how she still means it. But she does." Shaquille had read the letter 7 times. The piece of paper in his folder was a property deed. He had purchased the building 12 days ago through a holding company. The transfer paperwork required an in-person visit. He had chosen to come himself. He had chosen window 4. The board clicked to 247. Shaquille stood. He was the largest person in the room, and when he stood, the room felt it. He walked to the number machine on his way to the counter, and he stopped. And he collected the entire remaining stack of number slips, every one from 248 to the end. And he walked back through the rows and placed one in the hand of every person still waiting. There were 11 of them. He said nothing. He simply handed each person a slip and kept moving. Earl Tatum received his slip and looked at it, and then looked up at Shaquille and said, very quietly, "Son." Just the one word. A complete sentence inside it. At window 4, Janelle looked up when Shaquille arrived. She began her standard greeting. He slid the folder across the counter, and she opened it and read the first page, and looked up and read it again. He said, "Your sister sent me a letter. I read it 7 times. Janelle said nothing for a moment. Then, "She wasn't supposed to do that." "I know," Shaquille said. "I'm glad she did." The folder contained the deed. It also contained a second document, a letter of appointment, signed, naming Janelle Morris as the paid community liaison for the building's new tenant foundation, a position working alongside her current role, doubling her income and covering her son's remaining 2 years of college in full. Janelle put her hand flat on the counter. She looked at the notebook paper sign on the wall beside her, the one she had written and taped up every Monday for 2 years. She looked at it the way you look at something you wrote so long ago you have stopped seeing the words. Shaquille read it too. Then he said, "You meant it when you wrote it." She said, "I always meant it." He said, "I know. That's why I'm here." In the row where Shaquille had been sitting, Raymond Chalk had not moved. He was still holding his number slip. The 4 p.m. call felt very far away. He was looking at the counter, at the large man in the navy hoodie, at the woman behind the glass with her hand flat on the counter and her eyes full, at the notebook paper sign that said, "I am doing my best." And he was sitting inside and understanding about himself that he had been successfully avoiding for a long time. Before he left, Shaquille passed Raymond's row. He did not say anything pointed. He placed a card on the empty seat beside him. The card had the foundation's number on it. On the back, in Shaquille's own handwriting, 4 words. "When you're ready, call." Earl Tatum watched him walk out. Then he sipped the last of his water, set the paper cup neatly beside his chair, and went back to waiting, steady and unhurried and entirely present, the way a man waits who has learned that the most important things in any room are almost never the loudest ones. A man who arrived in pressed clothes and left holding a question he could not yet answer. A woman who wrote the same sentence on notebook paper every Monday morning because she still believed it, and found out that belief, patient and unannounced and unseeing of its own courage, eventually gets witnessed. A girl with 64 crayons, who never did find the orange one and colored her lion purple anyway, and was entirely correct to do so. And Shaquille O'Neal, who pulled number 247 from a machine and sat down in a plastic chair and did not move when someone told him to, because Philip O'Neal had asked him once, in a Newark living room, with complete and quiet certainty, "Finished? Good. Now what are you going to do?" He always knew the answer. And so, now, do you. Drop a comment and tell us where you are watching from today. And tell us, is there someone in your life who taught you the difference between reacting and responding? Leave their name in the comments. They deserve to be remembered. If this story moved you, give it a like. It takes 1 second, and it means everything to this community. Subscribe, because we are building something here for people who believe that dignity is not a reward for success. It is a requirement for being human. We have a story coming next that is going to stay with you long after it ends. We will see you there.